So, good morning, and welcome to the study, verse by verse study of going through the book of Job. It is going to be a good study, but let's pray. So, Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for this day. We ask your blessings on it in Jesus' name, and again, Holy Spirit, as we come into the challenges that the book of Job is going to raise for us, we ask that, as always, that you give us wisdom and insight both into the nature of reality and the nature of God and who we are and how to live. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so where we've left off, there has been a couple of councils in heaven where Satan comes in and the Lord initiates a conversation. It says to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And I will My main contention there is that in asking the question, it is the Lord Himself that is setting things up. Uh, if there's one wisdom point in the book of Job, it is that the easy thing when it comes to pain is to blame Satan. That's why that part of the story is in prose. That's why the book of Job is structured in a way where you read the prose sections and you say, boy, this is an interesting story. And then you start reading the poetry. And after two chapters, you say, I don't understand what's going on. And you skip to the end and you read the prose ending. And you think, well, that middle part could be all that important. And you just kind of have statements like the patience of Job. I mean, Job was not patient, okay, at all. But anyway, at the end of the prose section, Job has three friends that have come and they have been sitting with him. He's all covered with wormy boils. He's sitting where they are burning garbage because of his leprosy. He cannot be in the city. And they just sit there not saying anything for 7 days. And it's hot and it's stinky and it's not a nice place to be. It's not a Hilton. It's not cushy things. And the reason I keep bringing this up is I want you to get the idea that at the end of 7 days, you're in a situation that's about to explode, right? I mean, like I said, I could just as an experiment right here say I'm not going to say a word for 7 minutes. And at about minute number 2, you're going to say, when is this over? Right? Minute number 3, minute number 4, you're about to go crazy. All right? Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. They are fit to be 10. Now, why silence? Okay, now I think part of it is that culturally speaking, I believe the oldest was probably the one who had to speak first. So, and Job I think, is the oldest. And Job isn't speaking because he's in pain. On the other hand, and this is where you might say that this is the first wisdom point in the book, not one of his friends even bothered to tell one of his servants, could you go get Job some water? Yes.
Sue Seymour says the call is not running.
She's on Facebook. Facebook is, the call. Thank you.
Welcome to My One Number. If you are the host, press star now. Otherwise, please wait. Please enter your PIN followed by the... Thank you. You are the only participant in the conference.
She can come in now. This is where technology is good, right? I mean, okay. But the thing is, it's like no one is showing compassion. I mean, right? I mean, what's the big deal with coming up and saying, Job, what can I do for you? I mean, there's like, hi, Job, you're suffering. What can I do? And it's like, let's sit down and wait for him to speak. All right. Now, during these 7 days, Job is thinking, I don't deserve this, right? Job is thinking, I don't deserve this. And why might he say that? Well, how is Job introduced? There was a man who was blameless, upright, fearing God, turning away from evil. And the God-fearing, turning away from evil, blameless man is suffering. And Job's thinking, I've not done anything to deserve this. His three friends are sitting there. What did Job do to deserve this level of pain? Because remember the logic that's going on here. Okay, I'll repeat the syllogism because it's kind of important. It's kind of like the base of the book. All men are mortal. Abraham is a man. Abraham is mortal. All men are mortal. Pete is mortal. Pete is a man. Okay. No, Pete was my cat. He's died. Pete's mortal. Right. All right. All right. So if you sin, you will suffer. We'll say John sinned. John will suffer. Now let's reverse it. If you sin, you will suffer. Job is suffering. Job must have sinned. You see how that breaks down. So that is the fundamental logical flaw on which much of this book is based. All right. Now remember the characters of the three friends. Eliphaz. He is, in modern Christian terminology, Eliphaz is the charismatic. He is the one who will see visions. He is the one who will, more of the scientific mode, who will look at the world and make observations. Bildad is the traditionalist. He's the one who will stand by church doctrine. He will be the one who speaks of the church fathers and so forth. And then Zophar is the fundamentalist. He doesn't think. He just kind of parrots what everyone else is saying and goes along. One other character that I have to introduce today, because he's going to be named, is Leviathan. Leviathan, Leviathan. In the book of Isaiah speaks of Leviathan. And this is Isaiah 27, verse 1. In that day, the Lord will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, with his fierce and great and mighty sword, even Leviathan, the twisted serpent, and he will kill the dragon who lives in the sea. Okay. Leviathan is a dragon. We're going to see in the end of Job that Leviathan is a fire-breathing dragon. But remember, but we've seen this serpent before. We've seen him in the Garden of Eden as the one who deceived Eve. And we see him in the book of Revelation, the dragon that is waiting for the woman to give birth. So the dragon that waited and brought the beast up out of the sea. So this is a mythical creature that has a role in the book of Job. Anyway, let's get into chapter 3. Afterward, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. Now, this chapter, I'm going to tell you this in advance because you're going to see this flow. Job is, after 7 days of waiting and nobody speaking, after Job is thinking, all I'm doing is hurting and nobody's helping me and I don't deserve this, he, in a sense, starts out as the most irrational being ever. Okay? He begins totally irrational, but I want you to know as he speaks how he moves from being irrational to rational. It's almost like he's saying, okay, well, let's do this. Oh, that doesn't work. So let's do this. Well, that doesn't work. And he finally gets down to where he says something normal. All right. Now, on the other hand, I want you to think in terms of Eliphaz and his three friends who were Job. I mean, they're impatient too. And Job starts with the most irrational statements that you can imagine. And I think they stop listening. They start thinking about how irrational Job is, and they miss where he ends up. And right there, the argument starts. So what do I mean by irrational? Verse 2, and Job said, let the day perish on which I was to be born, and the night which said, a boy is conceived. I want a day removed from the calendar of history. Okay? And that particular day is the day that I was conceived. As it says, the day perish on which I was to be born, because that's the day of his conception. And the night which said, a boy is conceived, may that day be darkness. Let not God above care for it, nor let light shine on it. Let darkness and black gloom claim it. Let a cloud settle on it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. And as for that night, let darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Let it not come into the number of the months. I want the day gone. I mean, who cares what else it does? But I mean, let's start with. I mean, he could have. I mean, in terms of rationality, he could have said, I'm really sorry my parents came together that night. But his solution is, well, let's just not have the whole day. All right. So, and then he says this. Oh, anyway, behold, let that night be barren. Let no joyful shout enter it. Let those curse it who curse the day, who are prepared to rouse Leviathan. Okay, that twisted serpent, that dragon. Now, why is Job mentioning this? Leviathan actually has a place in Canaanite mythology. It comes by other names. It comes by the name of Yam, Y-A-M, sometimes Y-A-M-M, or Lotan, which is another name, but it is a sea serpent. Interesting enough, a seven-headed sea serpent. And if you look at the number of heads that come out from the dragon of the sea, 7 heads. So there is a seven-headed sea serpent in Canaanite mythology that Lord Baal fights against. All right, so so here we're talking about mythical creatures, and in a sense, a mythology that works in terms of creation and so forth like that. And now you have to ask yourself, why is Job speaking of that myth? All right. Well, because he's basically saying, I'm appealing to the myth because, the myth is about creation. So let's say those who would just rouse Leviathan to destroy the day. Now, it is not uncommon for Christians to have connections. We make connections to Greek mythology all the time, right? If you read what I think is C.S. Lewis's most brilliant piece of fiction, That Hideous Strength, there are beings that are associated with Mars and Venus and the other planets that show up, but they're modeled after the Greek gods. Because he's drawing on that mythology to tell a Christian tale. Or see another. I consider That Hideous Strength to be his greatest book. C.S. Lewis himself thinks that his greatest book is known as Until We Have Faces, which is a retelling of the story of Cupid and Psyche, but again with a kind of a Christian motif. So the thing is, these are stories that are part of culture that we as believers can draw on because of what they represent. All right. So that's what Job is doing here. He is taking the entire Canaanite creation myth and saying, okay, well, let's take that myth and let's just say it's true, and let's just say that it can destroy the day that I was conceived. Like I said, we don't have to call this rational, right? All right, so let the stars of its twilight be darkened, let it wait for light but have none, and let it not see the breaking dawn. because it did not shut the opening of my mother's womb or hide trouble from my eyes. Now, you talk about narcissism, right? I was conceived that day, let that day not be. Right? All right. All right. So at this point, I think he's thinking, oh, well, that's maybe a little bit over the top. So I said, okay, well, why did I not die at birth? Right? So you see the motion here. Let the day that I was conceived disappear. Okay, well, why did I not die at birth? Okay, now he's getting a little more reasonable. Why did I not die at birth? Come forth from the womb and expire. Why did the knees receive me, and why the breast that I should suck? For now I would have lain down and been quiet. I would have slept then, and I would have been at rest. I would have been at rest with kings and with counselors of the earth who rebuilt ruins for themselves, or with princes who had gold, who were filling their houses with silver, or like a miscarriage which is discarded, I would not be, as infants that never saw light. There the wicked cease from raging, and there the weary are at rest. The prisoners are at ease together. They do not hear the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. So if I had died at birth, I would not be alive today in this pain. All right? So for a little more reasonable. And then he's, okay, but I didn't die at birth. So where am I now? Why is light given to him who suffers? Now he asks the question. Why is light given to him who suffers, and life to the bitter of soul, who long for death, but there is none, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures? Job wants to die. And remember what the Lord told Satan. Only spare his life. And Job is saying, I mean, if Job had a voice and that says, no, don't let him go. Let Satan go. Let him take my life. Because Job is left with just the suffering, with no possibility of an end to it. Who rejoice greatly and exult when they find the grave. Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden and whom God has hedged in? All right, now notice here that Job is not thinking in terms of, oh, there's this being called Satan who has done this. It is God who has hedged me in. It is God who has destroyed my businesses, destroyed my family, taken away my health, and put me in this situation where all I have is pain. And there's nothing I can do about it. For my groaning comes at the sight of my food, and my cries pour out like water. For what I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I am not at rest, but turmoil comes. Now, here he is totally rational, right? He moves from cursing the day of his birth to saying, I'm hurting, guys. That's the movement here. At the end, he's just saying, I'm hurting. But the thing is, now, Eliphaz, he's still thinking about how Job began and the irrationality of it. I believe he probably stopped listening a long time ago. Not to mention the fact that for 7 days, he's been thinking about what did Job do to deserve this, and he's thinking that Job is absolutely, totally responsible for the state that he's in. So Eliphaz the Temanite says, if one ventures a word with you, will you become impatient? I mean, Eliphaz here is saying, Job, you seem like the ticking time bomb. So I need to say some hard things to you. But who can refrain from speaking? So you see the state that Eliphaz is in. Who can refrain from speaking? You've just said some outlandish things, and I can't be quiet anymore. Behold, you have admonished many, and you have strengthened weak hands. Your words have helped the tottering to stand, and you have strengthened feeble knees. But now it has come to you, and you are impatient. It touches you, and you are dismayed. Eliphaz, have you seen Job? I mean, was Job comforting anyone in the state that Job is in? I mean, why are you, Eliphaz here is treating this very, very lightly, as if Job is pain is of no consequence. Is not your fear of God your confidence, and the integrity of your ways your hope? Remember now. Now, notice what he's saying here. Remember now, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the upright destroyed? Okay, there is our syllogism. Job, you're suffering, and suffering comes to those who are not innocent. I mean, there's the statement. Whoever perished being innocent, or where were the upright destroyed? According to what I have seen, those who plow iniquity and those who sow trouble harvest it. By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they come to an end. The roaring of the lion and the voice of the fierce lion and the teeth of the young lions are broken. The lion perishes for lack of prey, and the whelps of the lioness are scattered. Job, the lion represents the wicked. And, by the blast of the breath, he comes to an end. So Job, if you go back to the integrity of your ways, you will be safe. But you're not innocent because you're suffering. Okay. And now Eliphaz speaks of a vision that he had. Now a word was brought to me stealthily, and my ear received a whisper of it. Amid disquieting thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falls on man, dread came upon me and trembling, and made all my bones shake. Then a spirit passed by my face. So he is in a dreamlike state, and a spirit comes to him. And it says this, then a spirit passed by my face, the hair of my flesh bristled up. It stood still, but I could not discern its appearance. A form was before my eyes. There was silence. Then I heard a voice. Can mankind be just before God? Can a man be pure before his maker? Right? Now, is this a good spirit? Is it Satan? I mean, basically what this spirit is now telling Eliphaz is that, no one can be right before his maker, right? He puts no trust even in his servants, and against his angels he charges error. How much more those who dwell in houses of clay, whose foundation is in the dust, who are crushed before the moth. Between morning and evening they are broken in pieces. Unobserved they perish forever. Is not their tent cord plucked up within them? They die yet without wisdom. So this spirit is saying, look, he charges error against his angels. How much more, mankind in their frailty? Is he going to pull up their tent cords and bring them to dismay? Now, there's a little bit of a hint here, but you can imagine how Satan, who, remember, we are told was kicked out of heaven, was punished by God. I mean, one can almost say, like, he charges error against his angels. He charged error against me, maybe. Okay. But anyway, for chapter 5, the first verses here I find are very troubling. Before I read them, remember what has happened to Job, specifically his children, right? A wind came, blew the house down, they were crushed in the rubble. Eliphaz is saying this, call now, is there anyone who will answer you? And to which of the holy ones will you turn? For anger slays the foolish man, and jealousy kills the simple. And here, of course, he's referring to Job's initial outburst, which was angry. So anger, anger slays the foolish man, and jealousy kills the simple. I have seen the foolish taking root. I cursed his abode immediately. Okay, Eliphaz is saying this. I have seen the foolish taking root, and I have cursed his abode. His sons are far from safety. They're even oppressed in the gate, and there is no deliverer. His sons are far from safety. Like Job's sons were so far from safety. I mean, why is Eliphaz saying this? Here he's saying, like, okay, now maybe in the past. Eliphaz is either saying this about Job, or he's saying, look, I've seen the foolish man, and I've cursed his abode, and his sons are far from safety. So Job, your sons, they're far from safety. They were far from safety because you are foolish and angry. His sons are far from safety. They are even oppressed in the gate, and there is no deliverer. His harvest the hungry devour, and take it to the place of thorns, and the schemer is eager for their wealth. For affliction does not come from the dust, nor does trouble sprout from the ground. For a man is born for trouble as sparks fly upward. But here again, he's saying, look, Job, we need to get to the bottom of why you're suffering. And that bottom is your lack of innocence, your lack of being upright, your foolishness, your anger, because those are the things that come about from sin. Man is born for trouble as sparks fly upward. But as for me, I would seek God, and I would place my cause before God, who does great and unsearchable things, wonders without number. He gives rain on the earth and sends water on the fields, so that he sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. He frustrates the plotting of the shrewd, so that their hands cannot attain success. He captures the wise in their own shrewdness, and the advice of the cunning is quickly thwarted. By day they meet with darkness, and grope at noon as in the night. He saves from the sword of their mouth. He saves from the sword of their mouth, and the poor from the hand of the mighty. So the helpless has hope, and unrighteousness must shut its mouth. All right. So God's gracious in terms of what He does on the earth, and if you're lowly, He will lift you up. But again, He captures the wise in their own shrewdness. And we need to understand that when He is saying this, He is looking at Job and his suffering and saying, you have been caught in your shrewdness. He's not being abstract here. See, that's one of the reasons that this book almost has to be taken slowly, is you have to look at each line and realize that there's a human situation going on here. The helpless has hope. Unrighteousness will shut its mouth. Okay, Job, shut up. Behold, how happy is the man whom God reproves. So do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. Now that's helpful, right? Don't despise the discipline of the Almighty. He's punishing you. For He inflicts pain and gives relief. He wounds, and His hands also heal. For from 6 troubles He will deliver you. Even in 7, evil will not touch you. In famine He will redeem you from death, and in war from the power of the sword. You will be hidden from the scourge of the tongue, and you will not be afraid of violence when it comes. You will laugh at violence and famine. You will not be afraid of wild beasts, for you will be in league with the stones of the field, and the beasts of the field will be at peace with you. You will know that your tent is secure, for you will visit your abode and fear no loss. You will know also that your descendants will be many, and your offspring is the grass of the earth. You will come to the grave in full vigor, like the stacking of grain in its season. Behold, we have investigated this, and so it is. Hear it and know for yourself. All right, so again, what Eliphaz is saying. Come back to verse 7, chapter 4, verse 7. Remember now, whoever perished being innocent, or where were the upright destroyed? And he's saying this to a man who, for all visibility, has been destroyed. And again, we need to remember, when we read this, we need to remember how this book opened. There was a man from the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was upright, was blameless, upright, fearing God, turning away from evil. And that man is sitting there with the loss of everything, including his health, a wife that wants him to curse God and die so she can move on, and 3 friends now that are convinced that he must be the greatest of sinners because of the level that he is being punished. And he said, how happy is the man of God reproves? And what Eliphaz is saying there is, Job, confess to what you've done, and it will go well with you. Confess to what you've done, it will go well with you. Okay. Again, just to put a lot of this in perspective, how often have you said or have heard other people say, what have I done to deserve this? or the word karma. The word karma appears in, I mean, this is a book of karma, or you might say this is the book of anti-karma, because Job is just suffering. Okay, all right. So we have Job, Eliphaz. Now Job is going to respond, and then we're going to have Bildad speak. But here's what Job says. He says, well, oh, that my grief were actually weighed and laid in the balances together with my calamity. All right. So this is Job's way of saying, I'm innocent. Okay. All right. So Eliphaz, you're saying that, if you are innocent, you're going to do okay. But if you're not as innocent, you're not going to do okay. So, we got balance, like my good, my evil, where does it work out? And Job is saying, okay, let's take my pain and let's take it against my life. Are they in balance? Because they're surely not, right? I'm sitting here, loss of everything. And you're saying that I have to have committed such a sin that I'm deserving of this? Well, let's look at it. Do I? Because he says then, okay, so that my grief were actually weighed and laid in the balances together with my calamity. For then it would be heavier than the sand of the seas, therefore my words have been rash. Okay, all right, so I began with cursing the day of my birth. All right, sorry. I'm upset, sorry. Okay, so my grief, I'm saying some rash words. He says, for the arrows of the Almighty are within me, their poison my spirit drinks, the terrors of God are arrayed against me. Job understands where his pain is coming from. All right? He's being very direct here. The arrows of the Almighty. I have no illusions that my pain has come from anything but the hand of God. He says, does the wild donkey bray over his grass, or does the ox low over his fodder? Can something tasteless be eaten without salt, or is there any taste in the white of an egg? My soul refuses to touch them. They are like loathsome food to me. So he says, if a donkey is in a pasture, is he braying? Is he complaining? Okay. Again, I like to talk about my cats, but my cat has a very loud meow, and lately she's been saying, it's dinner time. And I look at her and I say, it's an hour. It's an hour away. Does she shut up? No, she is just right. Gets louder and louder, takes a little paws at me. She's braying over not having food. Here the image, does a wild donkey bray over his grass? No, he's chomping away at it. And what Job is saying here is, of course I'm agitated. The comforts, the comforts of a good life are denied me. Of course I'm agitated. Okay, so I talked about cursing the day of my birth, but I'm hurting. And then he says, oh, that my request might come to pass and that God would grant me my longing, which is to die. Job, there's an aspect where Job looks and says, this is the end. I can't do anything. Because I'm all leprous and so forth. I can't go out and try to rebuild my businesses, and this looks like it's a pretty permanent disease, and there's nothing I can do. So I'm praying for my death. Would that God were willing to crush me, that he would loose his hand and cut me off. But it is still my consolation, and I rejoice in unsparing pain that I have not denied the words of the Holy One. Okay. Upright, blameless, fearing God, turning away from evil. He's saying, I'm not denying my God. There's a book that C.S. Lewis wrote called A Grief Observed. And he wrote that when his wife, A Grief Observed. It's a diary that he kept after his wife died. I mean, it devastated Lewis. And in that book, I mean, it's a very honest book. But in that book, he says, some would say that, is this death of your wife causing you to doubt the existence of God? And what C.S. Lewis wrote is, no, I don't doubt his existence. I doubt his goodness. Right? I don't doubt his existence. I doubt his goodness. So here, it's like, this is a little bit where Job is going. The arrows of the Almighty are within me. I don't deserve this. So who is this God? I mean, he's going to develop this over time. But he says, I've not denied the words of my Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait? What is my end that I should endure? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Is it that my help is not within me and that deliverance is driven from me? And nobody says here, and it goes back to my first words, is like, nobody comes up and says, Job, what can I do? He says in verse 14, for the despairing man, there should be kindness from his friend, so that he does not forsake the fear of the Almighty. Right? Now, there's a wisdom point from when we were around people with grief. I mean, we don't necessarily have to answer them. We don't have to explain to them why they're suffering. But it sure is helpful if we come alongside them and says, what can I do? I want to help. Show kindness. I mean, and this is, for Job, this is what, I mean, I think Job, after he was done with his first little speech, was sorely taken aback by the outburst of Eliphaz. I mean, where did that come from? He says, my brothers, and here he's talking to his friends, my brothers have acted deceitfully like a wadi, like the torrents of wadis which vanish. Now, let me tell you what a wadi is. Okay, there are channels in the desert-like places in Israel. They're called wadis, and the thing is that most of the time they're dry, but when there's rain up in the mountains, they suddenly fill with water. All right, and there's a time where when those wadis fill with water that you're able to come and you're able to refresh your animals and refresh yourself and things like that. So wadi is you might say is a intermittent stream. My brothers have acted deceitfully like a wadi, like the torrents of wadis which vanish, which are turbid because of ice into which the snow melts. When they become waterless, they are silent. When it is hot, they vanish from their place. So you see the description of the wadi there. The paths of their course wind along, they go up into nothing and perish. The caravan of Tema looked. Eliphaz the Temanite, right? The caravans of Tema looked, right? And the travelers of Sheba hoped for them. They were disappointed, for they had trusted. They came there and they were confounded. And the image here is the caravan saw the wadi, went to the wadi, and hoped for water. Okay? The caravans of Tema, Eliphaz, came to me and was hoping, in a sense, for something not as bad as what they saw. Hoping for someone who was saying, well, I did this and I'm so sorry, and that's why this has come upon me. But they came and they got this outburst and they say, this is more than I can handle. So they come to the water. It's like Job was not what they expected, and they're disappointed. They were disappointed for they had trusted. They came there and were confounded. Indeed, you have now become such. You see a terror and are afraid. Have I said, give me something, or offer a bribe for me from your wealth, or deliver me from the hand of my adversary, or redeem me from the hand of tyrants? Have I asked anything from you? I'd like a little kindness. Well, teach me, and I will be silent. Show me how I've erred. How painful are honest words, but what does your argument prove? You said, where have the innocent suffered? Well, look at me. Right? Look at me. So what does your argument prove? Do you intend to reprove my words when the words of one in despair belong to the wind? Again, we're coming back to, okay, so I cursed the day of my birth. You know, does that make me deserve your outbursts and what you've said about me and what you said about my kids? He says, you would even cast lots for the orphans and barter over your friend. Now, please look at me and see if I lie to your face. Desist now, for let there be no injustice. Even desist, my righteousness is yet in it. Is there injustice on my tongue? Cannot my palate discern calamities? So, and notice, I mean, Job, in a sense, here is being reasonable. And one of the things that you need to notice as these dialogues continue is Job is going to become stronger and stronger and stronger. And his friends are going to be digging their heels in more and more and more. That's the dynamic here. I look at Job 6 and I say, see where Job is apologizing for the rashness of his words. He is asking for kindness. He is then saying, okay, show me where I've erred. He's putting a challenge out, but I think in all of this, that word where he says, from the despairing man should have kindness from his friends. And it's not here. And you need to think in terms of, like, if you were there observing this, Eliphaz is speaking, but when he talks about his brothers and he's looking at all his friends, they're all glaring at him. There is nothing but judgment here. Job continues on. Is not man forced to labor on earth, and are not his days like the days of a hired man? A slave who pants for the shade, as a hired man who eagerly waits for his wages. So, I am allotted months of vanity, and nights of trouble are appointed me. I read this and I'm reminded of a dialogue that's in the Lord of the Rings. The first one where Gandalf, I believe, is talking to Frodo, and he's talking about sometimes we're born for times like this. And Job is kind of saying this. Okay, so all right, I'm in a time of appointed trouble. So my lot of nights of vanity and nights of trouble appointed me. When I lie down, I say, when shall I arise? But the night continues, and I'm continually tossing until dawn. My flesh is clothed with worms and a crust of dirt. My skin hardens and runs. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle and come to an end without hope. All right. This is very personal. I mean, now we get a picture of what it's like to be Job, right? My flesh is clothed with worms and a crust of dirt. Okay, so I mean, I don't know what he had, but it just has to be painful. And my skin hardens and runs. And it's like I said, he's scraping himself with a potsherd. I mean, he's a mess. And he says, remember that my life is but breath. My eye will not again see good. The eye of him who sees me will behold me no longer. Your eyes will be on me, but I will not be. When a cloud vanishes, it is gone. So he who goes down to Sheol does not come up. He will not return again to his house, nor will his place know him anymore. So Job is saying, really, guys, we're just waiting for my end. And how I wish it would come quickly. So now, verse 11. This is Job in beginning of verse 11 is not speaking to his friends. Job, when he's, sometimes when he's talking, he stops talking to his friends and he starts speaking to God. And verse 11 is one of those transitions. So you might want to just put a note here. Job is praying. Therefore, I will not restrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of the soul. Am I the sea or the sea monster that you set a guard over me? If I say my bed will cover me and my couch will ease my complaint, then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me with visions, so that my soul would choose suffocation, death, rather than my pains. I waste away. I will not live forever. Leave me alone, for my days are but a breath. What is man that you magnify him, that you are concerned about him, that you examine him every morning and try him every moment? Will you never let your gaze turn your gaze away from me, nor let me alone until I swallow my spittle? Have I sinned have I sinned? What have I done to you, O watcher of men? Why have you set me as your target so that I'm a burden to myself? Why then do you not pardon my transgression and take away my iniquity? For now I will lie in the dust, that you will seek me, but I will not be. So in his prayer, he says, I will not restrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. And he basically noticed that he is here in his connection with God is a profound honesty. Okay, goes along with one of my maxims, which is never let sound theology interfere with an effective prayer life. Because Job here, I mean, he could. I mean, we could say what he knows all this, but Job is saying, I'm hurting, and he says, "Am I the sea or the sea monster that you set a guard over me?" This, by the way, remember who Leviathan is. He's a sea monster. And Job here is saying, Lord, am I Leviathan that you're doing this? I mean, it seems like you think that I'm something like Leviathan. And then he says, if I say my bed will comfort me, my couch will ease my complaint, then you frighten me with dreams and terrify me by visions. No, the one thing that you need to understand here is Job, again, looks at the Lord and says, my troubles have come from you. All right. And again, this is along the lines of C.S. Lewis. Is not that I question that there's a God. I question that he's good. And this is the beginning of Job's reasoning on exactly those lines. Because in a couple more chapters, Job is going to be saying, you know what? I want an arbiter. I want someone to come between me and God and judge between us. Okay? Because I'm going to come out on top. All right? So, like I said, Job is the one who is asking the hard questions, right? It's easy. Like, again, you read the first couple of chapters that are all in prose, and you say, yep, that's Satan. He's the one who's causing pain on the earth. But you come into the body of the text, and Job is very, very clear. As a matter of fact, he is talking to God directly about it. And if you want to know, well, is Job really off here? We could go to where Job repents, and when the Lord comes to Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, and say, you have not spoken correctly about me as my servant Job has. So I mean, I'm not saying that everything that Job says is correct, but there is something more profoundly correct about what Job says and deals with than the three friends. Because the three friends were just quick to judge, and they were quick to say that the Lord, that Job has to be at fault. And Job is saying, no, I mean, I'm upright, blameless, fear God, turning away from evil. And the Lord is terrifying me with dreams in the night. He says, and just leave me alone. There's a sense where he's saying, Lord, just stop looking at me. Walk away. Let me die. All right, so Bildad. Yes, Sal.
You just opened up a thought when you said you did a few seconds ago about how the first two chapters are prose, and since then we've been poetic.
Yes.
And again, you can really see it as you look at the page and how the stanzas and everything are constructed. Is that some kind of a Jewish literary thing? Why is that changed like that?
I think, good question. I actually began to study with the question, if you open a book and the first line is once upon a time, what's the last line going to be? I think this is a literary form that's even more ancient than ancient Israel. Like I said, Job is the oldest book in the Bible in terms of the dating of when it was written. So I think that it is, the prose sections are just like a prologue, right? And then it gets into the dialogue. I think that if Job were ever performed as a play, that would be that there's something about this that says, this needs to be dramatized. You need to have good solid actors that are saying all the right things in the right way, that have the right expressions on their faces. I mean, what I'm trying to do as a teacher of this book is to read the text and kind of create a picture for you for what's going on. I mean, Eliphaz. I mean, go back to chapter 5. I mean, where he says in verse 3, chapter 5:3, I have seen the foolish taking root, and I accursed his abode immediately. His sons are far from safety. I mean, I read that and I'm thinking, did Eliphaz somehow curse Job? I mean, that phrase, his sons are far from safety. I mean, certainly this is a picture of Eliphaz who is quickly to look at evil and bring a curse down on it. But his sons are far from safety. I mean, he's talking to a man who lost his sons, right? From a cursed abode, so to speak. So this is a literary form. And again, the way that the structure of the story is, which I believe when it was written was common, but that's speculation. All right. But it just has, the story is in its structure has prose and prose, beginning prose, ending prose. It has a cycle of 3 dialogues reading to a crisis point. Then the author speaks, and the author says, okay, you're in despair now. You, the reader, you, the hearer, are in despair because you don't see an answer. And then there's this great chapter 28, which speaks of wisdom. So the three dialogues are then matched by 3 monologues. And each monologue comes closer and closer to a resolution. And then you have the prose ending. So you see the balance of the book: 3 dialogues, 3 monologues, a crisis point where it says, where is the way to wisdom? God knows its way. So you might say that the opening, the 3 dialogues are showing the need for wisdom. There's the promise of wisdom that's made, and then the 3 monologues begin to reveal the wisdom. Okay, so that's the structure of the book. The monologues. I think part of working through this book is to know how it flows. So the monologues kind of go like this. Job has a monologue, and by the time he is done with his monologue, you are not so sure that he is all that innocent. I mean, you begin to see that he had a great deal of pride. There's a lot of complaints. You're not as by the time Job is done with his monologue, you're not as sympathetic with him. All right. Then you have Elihu, and Elihu is the one who corrects the syllogism. He's the one who says, "Look, you have the syllogism. If a man sins, he will suffer. Job is suffering. Job is a sinner." And it's Elihu who says, "No, there can be other reasons for suffering." So, and not only that, but Elihu, in contrast to his friends, tells Job, I'm with you. None of his friends ever said that, but Elihu does say that. He says, Job, I'm with you. I want to justify you. But he's also at the same time complaining, does say, Job, this is where you get it wrong. Go ahead.
Isn't that also kind of a contrast? Because in this culture, age was associated with wisdom, and yet
Yes.
the young guy
Yes.
provides the wisdom in the story.
Yeah, that's the dramatic irony there. Precisely. And then the Lord comes along and says, why are we even talking? Okay. If you can tell me the dynamics of the universe that I created, then we can talk about your suffering. But in the meantime, you have to trust my wisdom in your suffering. And the interesting thing about the end, and again, this is the end is to me is important, because at the end of the Lord's monologue, he brings forth 2 mythical beasts. One is named Behemoth, and the other is Leviathan, interesting enough, the fire-breathing dragon. Behemoth is this creature that can stand in a river that where the flood rages and is not moved. I mean, I dare say that I think part of the book of Job is that they were well aware of dinosaur bones, because I mean, I read about Behemoth and those big, huge creatures that just have legs like tree trunks, standing in a river, and the flood comes and they just stand, right? And then there's Leviathan, the fire-breathing dragon, and the Lord's final words about him: he is king over all the sons of pride. And I think what the message at the end of the Lord's monologue is simply this: Job, do you want to be Behemoth? Do you want to be Leviathan? Okay, do you want to be that which is so sturdy on the inside that you could stand in the raging flood? Or do you want to be the one that spouts off? Because Job, you are in danger of pride. And when the Lord says he is king over all the sons of pride, where Job sees the proudness that he had inhabited him, and that's what he repents of. Okay, so again, just that interesting story. One could say, well, why is the Lord, talk about Leviathan, mythical fire-breathing dragon? Because it's a motif. It's something that Job understands, and it may also be that. Could there have ever been a fire-breathing dragon? Well, there is a little creature called a bombardier beetle. And a bombardier beetle has two glands that have chemicals that, when mixed together, are very, very hot. And when he's attacked, he just spits the two glands come together and spit out of an orifice, and it strikes his attacker with a very hot, boiling liquid. So yeah, this notion of methane and maybe. Who knows what the Lord had created in the past, but in a sense, it doesn't matter. But this is how Job ends, or this is what, Job is still in his pain, and the Lord, the beginning of his monologue is, who is this that darkens counsel with words without knowledge? Okay, Job, I'm not going to answer you. You're going to answer me. I will ask you and you will answer. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? There is a movie. It's called Tree of Life. It's by Terrence Malick. And it actually opens with that line. When the movie opens, it opens up, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? And it is a story about a lost brother. And it's kind of boringly told, but nevertheless, there is a section in the middle where, again, maybe at the crisis point in the movie, there's a section in the middle that has this story of creation. And the story of creation is the Big Bang and where things are created and so forth. And it's like, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? And then in the middle of the movie, there's this marvelous, really, it's very pretty, story of creation. And it's sort of like saying, okay, so you lost a brother, but you have to put all of that in the context of what I've created. What the Lord is saying, and this is, you might say that this is the ultimate, flow out of the book of Job, is the Lord has created the most amazing universe, and he's created us in it. And his, everything that he does is grounded in the wisdom that the Lord himself has, which is beyond us. And there's a sense where, okay, there's a war in Ukraine. People are suffering. And you say, how can a loving God do that? And the Lord is saying, my ways are higher than your ways. That everything that is happening is according to my purposes. And you have the death of Job's children at the beginning, right? at the end when it said that everything that Job has been doubled. 500 becomes 1,000, 700 becomes 1,400, 10 children become 10 children. Where's the doubling? Well, the first 10 are still there. You know, like you said, that whole thing in Elihu being the youngest and wisdom is coming from the youngest. There are, you might say, little puzzles that are kind of scattered through the book of Job. And one of them is, okay, why did Job not have 20 children? Well, he did. And it's the other interesting thing to note about the ending of the book of Job is how he treats his 3 daughters. They're all given names. The sons aren't named, the daughters are named, and he gives them an inheritance. You know, so there's some early, wisdom there about, the role of men and women and the fact that women need to be given some kind of honor. And there's something about Job's experience where he saw that. So little wisdom nuggets that are there that need to be understood. This is a good stopping point. We'll pick up Bildad. But again, in Bildad in verse 3, his part, does God pervert justice or does the Almighty pervert what is right? And there again, it's like, Job, if you're suffering for no good reason, that would be saying the Lord is perverting what is right. And we know he doesn't do that. Okay. Chapter 8 next week. Thank you all.